Hello, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Suzuki V-Strom 250. But first, roll credits. Okay, the Suzuki V-Strom 250. I would say it's a small adventure style bike, definitely aimed at the younger user, new users, people who aren't too confident with bigger bikes. Let's start and work our way up from the bottom. The tyres on the bike, I've never heard of the make. They are IRC. Never heard of them, but I can say that the tyres are fine. Adequate for this bike. We live in the countryside. I've used this bike through winter, country lanes, covered in mud with the farmers. We have a lot of roads that don't get treated with salt in the winter. Never had any mishaps on the tyres, so yeah, never heard of the brand, but the tyres are okay. Wheels 17-inch front and back magged, tubeless tyres as well. The brakes are adequate for this bike. It has an adjustable front lever. They're progressive, they're not too snatchy. It stops the bike when and where you want it to stop. I will say you don't get a lot of feel through the front end. You're not quite sure what the front end is doing. There is a little bit of dive with the suspension as well, but on the whole, you know, it's a small capacity bike and the brakes are adequate for that type of bike. The suspension setup on this bike, for me, it's a little bit harsh. It doesn't behave itself as I would like it to. Coming into bends, you find that the bike can become unsettled. But let me put that in context. You need to split this bike into two views. You've got to look at it from a new rider's perspective, or somebody who's not confident with bikes, to somebody like me who used to higher power bikes, been riding for a long time, more experienced. And to be fair, this bike isn't aimed at me and the type of rider that's experienced. So what happens is, with the more experienced rider, you find that you ride the wheels off this bike, you push it far further than it was designed to go, and that's when you get problems with the suspension. You know, you brake hard into a bend, you accelerate hard out of the bend, it does become unsettled, it does get a bit bouncy and skippy, can cause you to get offline quite easily. Just the same if you're on a long sweeper and you're going around full chat, try and get your knee down. You hit anything on the road that's uneven, a pothole, it throws this bike all over the place. So in that regard, for the likes of a rider like me, the suspension setup isn't very good. However, if you're a new rider or a rider that's not very confident, you're not going to ride this bike like this. And as long as you ride the bike sensibly within the parameters of what it's actually designed to do, you will have no problems. The suspension is adequate for a new rider. The engine, it's like a buzzy, angry little wasp. It's got plenty of power for a new rider. You know, it's fine up to about 60-70 miles an hour. After that, it seriously runs out of puff. It's nippy, it's got a really close gear ratio, so the short ratio, so from 0 to 60 from the traffic lights, you're really blipping through the gears really quickly. It can be quite fun to do that. Power wise, it's okay for a dual carriageway. I would not feel safe on the motorway with this bike. This bike will sit nicely at around 60-65 miles an hour. It feels comfortable in that. You push it any further than that and you start to feel as though you're thrashing the bike. For short commutes on a dual carriageway, you know, 10 to 20 miles, it's fine. You can sit at 70 miles an hour. It's quite buzzy at that speed, but no, for me, 65 miles an hour, it does feel okay. But it is underpowered. Once you get to that sort of 60-70 mark, you haven't got a lot of roll on power to overtake cars. I think the top end on this is about 90 miles an hour, I think, something like that from memory. It's a good while since I actually rode this bike. But for commuting, country lanes, twisties, for a new rider, it's fine. Power wise, for a more experienced rider, it's not aimed at us. We're not going to get anything out of this bike. Even on the twisties, you know, because of the suspension setup, because of lack of power for us, it's not really enjoyable on the twisties either for us. But for a new rider, you know, you've got to split this review into the two halves. For a new rider, don't be put off, because it's more than adequate for a new rider and somebody who's not confident. For everyday use, for what the bike is designed for, the power is okay. You just have to remember it's a 250cc. It is safe to keep up with traffic, so in real day terms, it's okay on power. As I said, it's like an angry little wasp. You do feel the vibes all the way through the rev range, coming through the foot pegs, the seat and the handlebars. It's not excessive, it's not really uncomfortable by no means, but you do feel it through most of the rev range. Comfort wise, the seat is terrible. I mean, it's one of the worst seats that I've ever come across on a motorcycle. I sit on this seat for more than 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and I'm in agony. So much so that I bought an Airhawk seat pad for it. You can extend it to about an hour maximum, but even with the Airhawk on, it's still an uncomfortable seat. I don't know what Suzuki were thinking of when they released this bike. This seat, they obviously hadn't had anybody actually sit on the seat and test it for a long time, because it is absolutely rock hard. Other than that, sitting position, your legs are quite an acute angle. I would say somewhere in between the average adventure bike and a sports bike. So that combined with the low seat height, if you're a tall guy or a tall chapette, then you might find it's a little bit cramped in the leg area. Other than that, you'll lean slightly forward on the bike, not so much so that it hurts your wrists or elbows. But I prefer that position slightly forward, because when you're sitting bolt upright like you do on some of the adventure bikes, if you've got hard suspension and you hit bumps, it transfers that bump straight up through the bike into your spine, and it gets uncomfortable after riding for long distances. So yeah, it's quite a comfortable position to be in, other than the cramped confines of your legs. Handlebars are quite narrow, but it's only a small bike, so you don't need big wide handlebars. I'll talk about the clock a little bit later when I give you a close-up of the clock. The mirrors are adequate. They don't vibrate. You do get fairly good view behind you, so no problems with the mirrors. Luggage-wise, these are the genuine Suzuki side panniers. Now, they look quite big, they look quite deep. However, when you open them, you find actually they're quite small inside. I don't know why that is, but they seem good quality. They're sturdy, other than not much capacity. There's not much else to say. This is a Kappa aftermarket box that I put on. Excellent piece of kit that, you know, for this type of bike. You're going to be using it for commuting, nipping to the shops, just doing everyday mundane things. Excellent to have on there. You can pop your helmet in there, pop your waterproofs in there, any shopping you've got. Excellent piece of kit. These are aftermarket crash bars, aftermarket spotlights, and the reason that I've got the spotlights on is that the headlight. The headlight is a Marmite headlight. It's a big round thing. People say that it looks like a goldfish bowl. I actually like it. It's quirky, it suits the bike. Unfortunately, it doesn't light the road up very well. A lot of these modern bikes, the headlights are absolutely terrible. So it's not alone in that state. Cheap pair of spotlights on there sorts that job out, no problem whatsoever. The screen is really small. You don't get a lot of wind protection from it. Your legs are quite well protected. However, your feet get absolutely soaking on this bike. I think it's just spit rising up from the front wheel, just covers your feet. As I said, the front screen, you don't get a lot of wind protection from that. You sort of get wind blast from this area upwards. It can be quite turbulent once you get to around about 60 mile an hour or faster. I don't know whether they do aftermarket screens. I don't ride this bike, we don't use this bike enough to warrant purchasing an aftermarket screen. Comes with a centre stand. I don't know whether that's an add-on. It most probably is. Most bikes nowadays, you don't get a centre stand with them. That's the Suzuki centre stand. Not much else you can say about that. It works. The exhaust, I think the exhaust looks quite well on this bike. A lot of modern bikes, the exhaust is absolutely horrible. But I suppose that's because they've got to meet this Euro 4, Euro 5, so the companies are a bit limited to what they can do with exhaust nowadays. But engine tone, it's on the quieter side, but it's nice, deep raspy engine tone. I will give you a listen of that a little bit later. So who is this bike aimed at? As I've already mentioned, I think it's aimed at newbies, people who've just passed the test, younger riders who might struggle with insurance costs. This is quite low, I should imagine, with it only being a 250. People who want a good commuter, a good little nippy bike for getting in and out of traffic, and just people who want a general hack, you know, for doing everyday mundane things where perhaps you've got a bigger bike and you don't want mauling around to go down to the local shops. This is ideal for that kind of thing. For a more experienced rider, would I use it for that? Most probably not. For me, it hasn't got enough power for me personally, and I do highlight that for me personally at my level of riding. I prefer to have a 500 or a 600 because it's more multi-purpose. You can use them for going down the shops, for doing a little bit of commuting, and you can still have more fun on the twisties. Whereas for a more experienced rider, you wouldn't get the same dual purpose of this bike, you know. So who would I recommend this bike to? We've already covered that. You know, newbies, people who aren't very confident, perhaps people who are of a shorter stature or not quite as physically strong and can't deal with the big bikes, the big adventure bikes. This is ideal. It's got a really low seat height. I'm not sure how high the seat is, but I should imagine it's around about 780. I can sit on this bike, not a problem at all, put my feet flat on the floor and still have bend in my legs. I've got a 34-inch inside leg. So it's not a high bike, it's very easy, very light when it's off the stand to maul around a car park. Very easy to paddle along when you're on your feet. I'll give you an example. I actually bought this bike for my wife just after she passed the test. She was confident and competent riding a bigger bike at speed, but only when she had somebody else with her. She didn't like going out on her own on a bigger bike. She hadn't got the confidence at that time. So we bought this, and this was great for her. She could nip down the shops. She actually works in care in the community. So we're going to keep this bike. If it wasn't for a job, we would most probably sell this bike because she's outgrown it now. But because of a job, going from location to location, short hops, you know, 10-minute drive, 15-minute drive, half an hour drive in between locations, this is absolutely ideal for her. She can use the top box to put her helmet in, to carry all the bits and pieces that she needs to do when she gets to her job. So, you know, that's a good example of what this bike is aimed at, really. That's the type of use that it's aimed at. It's for commuting, it's for everyday usage. Okay, a quick look at the clocks and we'll have a listen to what the bike sounds like. Okay, as you can see from the clock, it's white on black. I think that the clocks look really nice. It's only a tiny clock, but it's really set out well. Everything's really simple to see. You've got your gear indicator, your revs across the top of the screen, fuel on the right hand side, and clock and obviously your speed. As you can see that flashing left and right indicators. I think that's a nice touch. I really like the clock on this bike. It's really simple. At the side there, if you can see, you get a USB port for charging your devices, which is nice. The switch gear, you know, it seems very high quality. It doesn't feel cheap or nasty. It's just a simple little bike. It's really nice. If we get off the bike, have a look at that exhaust note. As you can see, it's quite muted, it's quite subdued, but a lot of the new bikes are. There's the goldfish. Oh, I quite like it, I think it looks okay. Okay, at this stage normally I would take the bike out on the road, give you some on-road footage, a little bit of commentary on how she handles. However, because of the coronavirus lockdown, we're unable to do that at this moment. So obviously a big thank you to all the key workers. Everybody stay home, do the right thing. I know we all love biking, but we've got to be responsible about these things. Everybody stay home. That's the end of the review. I hope it's been of some help, some interest. I am going to be putting other things on the channel. I've only just started doing these reviews. I'm going to be covering some more bikes. I'm going to be covering kit, helmets, riding suits, boots, all different things. I'm going to try and cover some other different topics as well to do with motorcycling, what kind of kit to take for what type of tour, how to pack the bike best for a tour, all different things. If there's anything that you would like me to cover within reason, just put remarks down below and I'll try and do a little video for it. Other than that, everybody stay safe, ride safe, Rider Reviews out.